All right, guys, welcome to Wide Awake News Radio on this 10th day. Oh, wow, this month's flying by. 10th day of April, Wednesday. We have an excellent program lined up for you tonight. Joining me here in just a minute is going to be Larken Rose, his website, larkenrose.com, and a gentleman who my sister has a crush on, not Bonnie, my sister Patty, before Bonnie yells at me, Mr. Mark Passio. And Mark, she drove me nuts. Can you get Mark on your program? This is before the first time you were on. She's a giant fan of yours, and I think she's got a little bit of a crush on you. Mark Passio is joining us as well. His main websites are whatonearthishappening.com as well as freeyourmindconference.com. We've got both these gentlemen for 2 hours, as I understand it, guys. I absolutely appreciate you doing that for 2 hours. And Karen knows, I'm very, very hesitant asking anybody to give me 2 hours of their evening. And I appreciate you guys coming on and agreeing to do that, unless I'm wrong and you guys both bail on me in 1 hour, and then I'll be all alone for hour number 2.
Yeah, we can see if we can stay coherent for 2 whole hours in a row.
We're in for the long haul tonight, Charlie.
Right on, man. I appreciate it. Let me get it started, guys. And topics that you want to bring to the program tonight, feel free when I kick it to you to go the direction you want. But I did a commentary video tonight, and the title of it's going to be, Here Comes the Rope-a-Dope. And in it, I talk about, I believe that we are financially, right, and as far as freedom goes, and as far as the enslavement of humanity goes, we are being set up for the biggest rope-a-dope in the history of the world. And what I mean by that is I look around and I look at the business world, and I look at the mainstream media, and I look at what the central banks are saying, I look at what the government's saying, and right now, man, they're selling hard the notion that we are out of the, we're not quite at the end of the tunnel, but man, we're basking in the light at the end of the tunnel, with 14,700 points on the Dow Jones, and even Biden coming out the other day talking about, we created jobs last month, not as many as we wanted, but we created jobs, so we're on the right path. And we have the central banks standing up along with the mainstream business media telling us now is the time, and I don't know how either one of you gentlemen feel about precious metals, but they're saying now is the time to unload your gold. Now I just want to put on a few facts, and then I'm going to kick it over to the guys. 14,700 points on the Dow Jones, 15,000, 20,000 is meaningless. It's meaningless unless you're using it as a counter indicator to the health of the economy. We've spent trillions and trillions of dollars to rescue the Dow. We've spent trillions and trillions of dollars to rescue a few institutions that brought us to our knees in 2007, 2008. We are seriously looking at a bubble expansion unlike anything before in our bubble economy history. Our sovereign debt has nearly doubled since 2007. The world's sovereign debt has nearly doubled in that short period of time. In the United States, we praise 14,000, 15,000 on the Dow, while we have 48 million people on food stamps. We have Joe Biden talking about the creation of jobs and on the right path, but when we look at these jobs, we understand that the largest percentage in the history of this nation, the largest percentage of jobs ever created in the food service sector is what we're enjoying for these job increases. These $10, $11, $12 an hour jobs for people who are living in an economy that is begging to deflate, yet their $10 or $11 or $12 an hour can't go and provide a decent living for them because we won't let assets deflate. We won't let home prices equal or fall to the level that matches the pay of people around this country. We won't let these institutions fall by the wayside and purge their failure. Instead, we shift it to the backs of the people of the world, and we call it prosperity because we have a few indicators that are shooting to the roof. Now, look, everything that we've seen happen over the last 5 years, everything that's done through legislation and through collusion between financial special interest in Washington, D.C., has set the tapestry of where we're going, right? Cyprus, not a one-off event, folks. It's not stopping in Cyprus. We're not going to see one country say, well, it's time to bail in. Matter of fact, get used to the word bail in. It was austerity, it was bailout prior to that. Now it is bail in. The Dodd-Frank bill, as Ellen Brown talked about last night, the Dodd-Frank Act, this did nothing more than make it completely legitimate for you, the depositors of these institutions, to be absolutely eviscerated in the next crisis. See, the governments are going to come out and say, we're standing our ground. We're not going to bail out these institutions anymore. But that is the con. That is the rope-a-dope. You see, the institutions could care less because they don't have failure to deal with anymore. It's been put on to the people of the world. They're basking in profit galore right now. And when it all comes crashing down, they will be the first ones paid off as the derivative holders, leaving nothing for the people who think that their money is safe. It is the biggest rope-a-dope in the history of humanity, at least financially, and it is going to lead to very, very difficult times. A change of life, a change of lifestyle for the West and the people of the world is coming. Might sound conspiratorial, it might sound pie in the sky, but if you can't separate reality from the fluff of the mainstream infotainment, and if you can separate the fluff and get past the infotainment, you can see the trajectory we are on. And I don't know how, people ask all the time, and they ask the experts we bring on here all the time, how much time is left before we see this massive punch that's coming from left field that's going to take the wind out of the sails of the people of the world. Who knows? We could wake up tomorrow morning. We could have it happen before the end of this program. It could be 2 years down the road. But, guys, it is coming. Central banks coming out saying sell your gold. Think about it. Think about what they say and look at what they do before you make any decisions, or you are scared into acting one way or another because a so-called official has told you to. All right, that's enough blathering from me. We have about 3 minutes before our first break. I want to introduce you both. Again, Mark Passio, thank you very much for joining me tonight. And Larken Rose, thank you very much for joining me tonight. Larken, I'll go to you first. Give us a quick background in about a minute, and Mark will do the same, and then we'll spend the next hour and 45 minutes having fun.
Well, I'm sort of a nobody. I was raised conservative-ish, liberal-ish, and it's funny how often people judge you or grade you by whether you have fancy letters after your name, and I don't at all. But I like to think about things, and I like to be consistent, and obsessing over being consistent for years and years made me fall off of the political spectrum, and now I'm sort of known as a troublemaker around the internet and things like that. But it's really, it's funny to me to see people thinking that I matter, thinking that my opinions matter, and it's the statists will say, oh, you have a following. No, I say things that are so idiotically obvious that I'm really ashamed it took me like 20 years to figure them out. And now other people go, oh, yeah, that's idiotically obvious. So it's a lot of people sort of see, well, there are leaders to the movement. I don't really think that's the case. I don't think it's the case with me, and I don't even think it's the case with other people who I respect and look up to. I think it's just a matter of there's an awakening going on, and I'm just happy to help out in any way I can. And this is not, this isn't a movement of leaders and followers. This is humanity finally waking up. Yeah,
I agree with that. Mark, if you get cut off, we'll get back on your background, but give us a little background of Mark Passio.
Sure. Well, many listeners who have listened to my radio show in the past know that I kind of am a lifelong occultist. I have a background in the occult. I actually have a background in dark occultism, and I came out of that mindset through years of suffering after having involvement in different dark occult orders, and finally really deeply understanding what this hidden knowledge which has been occulted or hidden away from humanity as a whole was truly about, and how that sequestering of that knowledge and using it as a power differential was leading to the destruction of human freedom. My conscience would not allow me to go further in that world, and so I woke up and came out of it, and I'm a whistleblower to how that knowledge is being used.
Outstanding, gentlemen. You both got the backgrounds in before the break, but here it is. We'll take our first break. We'll be back with Larken Rose, who claims he's a nobody. I don't believe him. And Mark Passio, very interesting individuals, both of them. We'll be right back with more Wide Awake News Radio. Hang tight. All right, guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Charlie McGrath, joined by the Larken Rose and the Mark Passio. I'm playing off of course, the last segment, and as our conversation went into the break, I let the guys know what I was going to bring up when we came back live. By the way, if you're listening and not in the chat room, you want to join the 50 or 60 folks we have in there, wideawakenews.com, the radio microphone on the right-hand side. If you want to watch us do this live, there's a link in the chat room to go to Justin TV, even though we have avatars up for Mark and Larken and then my live image. And I think we're doing that to make sure that we don't have any technical issues. But you can access the JTV feed from the chat room. And one other thing, I got to keep mentioning this because I keep forgetting. If you were signed up for the newsletter, which a bunch of you are, and you're not getting it, go to the homepage and re-sign up for it. We changed the provider, the email service provider, because it was a little more secure and we felt more comfortable with them. So if you're not getting it, then there was a glitch and you didn't get picked back up. So wideawakenews.com, banner right at the top of the screen, click on that and you will receive daily newsletters that we send out. All right, during the break, I said to these guys, look, I spent 2 minutes listening to both of you give your descriptions of one another. A brief description. Larken, you say you're a nobody. You just state the obvious. And then Mark's had a life that has been immersed in the occult and understands it. And I said, it's as if the entire country, the world, with pop culture, with the mainstream controlled media, with politicians, we're all immersed in a cult. So when somebody wakes up to this, like Larken, then they're seen as almost superhuman powers of reasoning. But in reality, no, he's just pulling himself out of the matrix or the cult or whatever you want to call it. And I asked Mark his an opinion on that analysis. And Mark, go ahead. I mean, my analysis is that as a general society, at least in the West, I'll comment to where I've lived. In the West, we are all just ready to bow down and worship whatever comes on the television or whatever one of these deities that we call politicians or politicians that pretend they're deities or portray themselves to be have to say. Am I way off on that?
No, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, this is a religion. I mean, we have to really get down to the core of what the problem with the mindset of humanity actually is. And the problem fundamentally comes down to a belief system that has no basis whatsoever in reality and is leading to ever increasing states of harm in our world and the degradation of human rights. So, it sounds strange to think of it in such a way, but the real fact of the matter is that the world has become a cult, a literal cult. And the cult's belief system is the belief in authority. It's the greatest mind control trick that the controllers of this world have ever been able to pull. They have convinced the majority of human beings that they do not have rights which they actually do possess, that the masses of people do not actually have rights which we actually do inherently possess, while simultaneously convincing them that a subset of humanity that calls themselves government or the authorities, quote unquote, have rights which they actually do not possess. That's where they have worked the human mind into, to give up the personal responsibility of the knowledge of what things are rights and what things are not rights, because they are wrongs, because they cause harm to others. And we actually believe, the vast majority of us actually believe, that we don't have rights that we do and that others have rights that they do not.
Yeah, Larken, do you want to comment on that? I mean, that's a pretty brilliant analysis. The natural law that is, we don't even talk about this. It doesn't even exist. Yet we have to give this authority to these politicians and government. We have to give them the authority in order for them to turn around and make laws that govern us.
Yeah, basically we have to hallucinate the authority for us to go along with it. As I often say, the power of government, quote unquote, is 100% in the perceptions of their victims. If tomorrow the victims wake up and say, you're just a gang of thugs, we don't have an obligation to obey you or pay tribute to or anything, goodbye, that's it, we're done. But because, and it's strange, because this cult belief that nobody would come up with on their own, I mean, nobody would think, you know what I really need in my life? I need somebody with the right to violently control me. Nobody thinks that's a good idea. And even in the ways people
Wait
talk
a minute,
about,
Mark. I bet you Mark could probably attest to the fact that there are people that thinks that's a good idea.
yeah, there may be like S&M places,
Yeah.
but we don't need to get into that. But so nobody would come up with this. It's a lie that has to be pounded into their heads year after year. And the problem is when everyone around you believes it, there's almost no incentive to question it, no matter how ridiculous it is. I mean, if you were in a tribe and we all worshiped the volcano and threw human sacrifices into it to try to get better harvests, what would be the incentive in anybody's head to question, are we sure that thing even has a god in it? Maybe it's just this big thing. And questioning government really is just accepting a truth that's so patently obvious that every 5-year-old already gets it, and it has to be programmed out of them. They have to have it programmed out of them that they're in charge of themselves. I mean, every kid gets, I'm in charge of myself. And eventually they learn, okay, I have to behave in certain ways to get other people to do what I want and cooperate and do that sort of thing. But no kid, like, starts out thinking he's the property of somebody else. He has to be taught that he's the property of somebody else. And that teaching is so successful that if I go up to somebody on the street and say, you are not beholden to government, they can't process it. Their heads explode.
Yeah, and because, we're children. And Eric Lovely said this last night, and I think he's right. We are children. We're taught to be. We're shown that this is the correct way we should lead our life, which is always subservient to our authority figures. But they certainly don't have our best interest at heart. We'll be back in just a minute with Mark and Larken. Hang tight. Guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Charlie McGrath joined by Mark Passio and Larken Rose. Guys, let's continue down the paths that you guys wanted to talk about tonight. Mark, I'm going to go to you because we finished with Larken on the last Mark and Rose. That kind of works with Larken on the last segment. What's happening in your world? Tell us what you have coming up. We were talking during the break about different locations we were in and how we would be better off or worse off if what really hit the fan. And you admitted that you were probably in the worst place because of the urban jungle that you live in.
Sure.
But go ahead and tell us what's going on and what you think our immediate future holds.
Well, of course, it's been a really busy time period for me because the Free Your Mind 2 conference is coming up here in Philadelphia at the end of this month, April 25th through 27th. Both Larken and I will be speaking at the event. If people want to check it out, there's still plenty of tickets available at the door. The website is freeyourmindconference.com. 24 phenomenal whistleblowers from all over the country coming together over a 3-day conference. It's going to be the biggest conference of its kind on the East Coast. That's what I've been really dedicating and devoting all of my time to. I'm going to be giving a presentation at the conference that I've been working on over the past few weeks and continuing to put a lot of work into. That's going to analyze a lot of deceptions in the New Age movement and then offer corrections to those twisted doctrines that have come down in the New Age movement as really open deceptions that are trying to lull people into a deeper trance and get them to stand down and not stand up for their inherent natural rights and defend them if necessary. I call it the presentation title is called New Age Bullshit and the Suppression of the Sacred Masculine. So I'm really gonna lambaste the New Age movement in this and really talk about how they've really put people into a very passive and acceptive mind state, get them to accept all of these intrusions into our natural rights and our freedoms, and really show people what the correct original intent of some of these teachings were and how they've been misconstrued over time. That's what's been taken up the bulk of my work recently.
And that's the 25th through the 27th in Philly.
That's right.
I put the freeyourmindconference.com. I put that link into the chat room. Talk about the New Age movement for a minute. I mean, is it, somebody like me who covers economic and political happenings almost every night, I almost look at stuff that happens in the New Age movement as almost a way to control. It's a control.
It's
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's another control system. I call it, as do many other researchers who have talked about its many deceptions. And don't get me wrong. Again, when I say there's many deceptions in it, there's also a core of truth. You know, they have to wrap the deception in the truth to give you that poison pill. You're not going to take it if you know it's poison. So they're going to wrap it attractively in a nice package so that you'll take it willingly. But it's a religion, and it's a religion of acceptance, of pushing someone into deeper right brain imbalance, which can be equally as devastating and harmful as left brain imbalance. I call it the last cul-de-sac before the gold mine. True spiritual gold lies just ahead of this cul-de-sac that they want to get you spinning around in a circle in, that ultimately leads nowhere. It just keeps you going like a hamster on the wheel. And it's not really getting people to a deeper understanding of rights. And that's what it's all ultimately about. This is all about morality. The loss of freedom in the world is intricately and inextricably connected with the loss of morality in the world. If we don't understand the difference between right and wrong, we go deeper and deeper into bondage. And the New Age movement kind of almost paints a little bit of a moral relativistic outlook on the concepts of right and wrong, because they are trying to teach people, in many cases, many New Age teachers at least, try to teach people that these are dualistic terms and you're seeing the world in dualism by seeing right and wrong. Well, this is nonsense. You know, dualism means that our thoughts, emotions, and actions are contradicting themselves, that we're in internal opposition. That's what's meant by a dualistic mind state. Not that there doesn't actually inherently exist right and wrong inherently in nature. You know, we have to understand right and wrong are inherent objective concepts that exist in nature, independent from our perceptions of them, because one involves harm or violence, the coercion of free will, and rights do not. Wrongs always involve the coercion of someone else's free will. Everything else that does not involve that form of coercion leading to harm to another person, that's a right. And we reserve all of those rights. And this is what really has to be understood, that objective difference between right and wrong, and then activating that knowledge in the form of conscience so that we choose the right over the wrong in all of our behaviors.
Well, let me ask you, because you know, you bring up a good point when you talk about nature, because I've heard people talk about, you know, that there is no right and wrong. It's just a perception. And you know, what would be my not argument, what would be my proof to show, look, it happens in nature. There's right, there's wrong, and I mean, there's no getting around it. You can't just pretend that everything is the way you want it to be in your group or your cult or whatever the scenario is. And they're truly, you know, they're the people coming to me with a perception or trying to convince me that everything is moral relativism that's not accurate. How do I convince them? How do I show them that it does occur in nature, right and wrong?
Well, these effects ultimately come down to us through the generative causes, which are our behaviors. So just through words, it would be very difficult. That's why it is such a colossal and difficult task to explain how natural law works, because there is a delay in the aspect of time for when a causal factor goes into work, and then for its manifestation to occur in our actual physical experience. If it were to happen immediately, if we did a wrong and an anvil dropped from the sky on our head, we'd make the connection really quick. Right. It doesn't work like that, because there's a quantum effect that has to take place. The actual field of intelligence that is everything, that makes up everything in the natural universe. It will intelligently rearrange circumstances and situations and energies to bring us eventually over the dimension of time, the result of what we've chosen and what we've put into that field through our behaviors. And it's a science. This isn't a belief system. Science actually is coming to understand how this works through new cutting edge sciences. And we're able to do experimentation, objective and repeatable experimentation in fields like this now, whereas this was never possible before. Many researchers are now really deeply beginning to understand these relationships between the causal factors that underlie our experiences and the manifestations which result as a result of what behaviors we choose.
Okay, so in the world of the New Age movement or the occult, is, I mean, the number one factor that would allow somebody to realize and understand the natural law is a belief system in a creator. And I'm not here to sell one over the other, but without that ultimate conscience and without that intelligent design, then the argument that can be made of there is no right or wrong becomes a whole lot easier. So, is it a case where these New Age movements, the occult, in these distractions, their number one goal is to either get you to, either believe there is no ultimate authority or that you are the ultimate authority?
In dark occultism, certainly man himself is seen as God, and there is no higher power. Therefore, man can rule in this hell instead of serve the will of creation and what is right. Okay, and become the ruler in this domain and basically make his own law. What I would say to your original question is that as far as natural law is concerned, it is not there. No belief system is required. It is
That's
a
right,
science. Yeah. So the same thing applies in other sciences. The same methodology of determining truth would apply. You can use the scientific method of observation, then testing, formulating a hypothesis, observing, and then adjusting your hypothesis and taking data and then sharing it and publishing the results. It works the same as the scientific methodology.
All right, guys, hang tight. We'll be back with Mark Passio and Larken Rose in just a minute. Hang tight. We'll be back to Wide Awake News Radio, where during the break, Gary Hendershot riled up the guests, and then, hey, the music started. I'm shutting off my mic. How convenient. Larken Rose, Mark Passio.
Hey, you know me, Charlie. Just helping you get the discussion hot. Get it going. Fire them up.
We know your stance, Gary. And I asked Mark about the occult. Is it the occult and the New Age movement? Is it a distraction? And then we get into relativism. Is there real morality, or is it all an illusion, or is this a trick, a gambit used by occults and the New Age movement to convince you that you are God, or there is no God, or there is no common law, there is no natural law. Everything is what it is, and everything is relative. And Larken, you had a great point during the break, so I'll pose that question to you. Is it pretty easy how easy would it be for you to prove that there is morality in this world and right and wrong?
Well, I think it's a fairly complex explanation. I mean, I totally believe there is objective right and wrong. I'm not a Christian and don't believe in what most people call God. I also don't think we're just machines or animals. But rather than get into that, see, a lot of the time I focus on, well, what does the world actually need to be peaceful? And I don't really care if the whole world understands that morality is objective. If they can understand enough that they don't try to hurt other people, like if somebody wants to worship that God or this God or no God, I don't really care. I mean, it's a fun intellectual discussion to have, and I have it with people, capable of talking and thinking about such things. But when it comes to moral relativism, usually all I do is demonstrate to somebody that they don't believe in it, because nobody actually believes in moral relativism. And as I was mentioning on the break, by the way, there's a thunderstorm over my head. If I suddenly disappear, it's because my power's gone. Just so you know.
Or that supreme being didn't like your answer.
Right, or he got mad about my opinion. So, oh well. But when people like often leftists and major statists say, "Oh, morality is all relative. It's just whatever we make up." And the rules of society, there isn't really right and wrong. There's the government, and they legislate stuff, and they decide what the rules are going to be, and blah blah blah. Right. And I say, okay, so if I break the rules and shoot the cop when he shows up, you're fine with that? No, you can't do that. Okay, you're not a moral relativist. You just totally lied, just to get out of having to take on the responsibility of figuring out for yourself right and wrong. But when it comes to statism, it's totally a moral belief. Not that the belief is moral, it's a belief about morality.
Right.
It's a belief in the moral obligation to obey the ruling class and their moral right to rule. So there's no such thing as a statist moral relativist. Now, for other reasons, I think there's no such thing as any other kind of moral relativist either. Now, people can argue about what morality is. You know, if they don't believe in a God, then they don't believe that morality equals what God told them to do. But to me, how people define morality, like I said, it's a fun intellectual discussion. But as far as getting people to behave like human beings, which is sort of my top priority, I think it's just to be able to bypass that and show whether you believe in morality or not, it's pretty easy to prove that the belief in government is insane and horribly destructive. And it's even easier if the person pretends he doesn't believe in morality, because if there's no such thing as right, there can't be such thing as somebody with the right to rule me, and I have the right to defend if they have the right to rule me, I have the same right to defend myself if you're a moral relativist. So that makes that conversation really short. But usually, and it ties in with what I know a whole lot less about sort of New Age stuff than Mark does, but just the general impression of hippie type stuff and New Age stuff and people who, they're open-minded and they want to be tolerant, but they want to be subservient. And I'm in the middle of working on a zillion different videos. One is about Why Speak of Violence is the title of it. Because a lot of people who believe in freedom are like, oh, it makes me uncomfortable when you do videos about forcibly resisting people with badges and stuff. And the reason I talk about that, and the reason it's totally important to talk about that, is if you think that you do not have the right to defend yourself from somebody with a badge, then you could pretend you're wise and open-minded and think every opinion is equally valid, but you don't. You think you're somebody else's slave. You just kind of want to be a wise slave. And fundamental to understanding self-ownership is understanding the right of self-defense. And so I intentionally push things in directions that make people uncomfortable, just because that's usually the place they need to think. And that's true of me, too. I push myself to where I'm uncomfortable because that's usually the things I still need to think about. But I think
it's a good model and a good tactic, if you will, to try to get somebody unplugged for be it whatever, man. Because I see the occult, the devil worshiper, the New Age movement. I see people that are bowing down before whoever, Lloyd Blankfein or Barack Obama. They're all the same to me. I mean, to me, this is all you have to give over yourself to this notion and this idea and be subservient, lose your sovereignty, and be a mental slave at the least to these institutions, regardless of what we fill in the blank with. So I think you bringing somebody to a place of discomfort is very important. I mean, this is how you break through the chains of the pop culture and force reality on somebody. Sometimes it's a hard awakening. Sometimes it doesn't take hold for quite some time, but you planted that seed with that harsh, scary place that you drag them, and it's effective.
Yeah, this is actually probably a good time for me to mention that the talk I'm doing at the Free Your Mind conference is called Removing Mental Malware, and it's about going through the process, because everybody looks out at the world and they think they see reality as it is. At any given moment, every single individual thinks that he sees reality as it is. You can't not, because the minute you think reality is something other than what you're seeing, then your perception changes. Right. You can look back in time and say, yeah, back then I was completely off my rocker and didn't know what was going on. But everybody right now thinks the perception is just fine, and it's easy to point to other people and say his perception is totally messed up. He's delusional, but my talk is basically about doing the uncomfortable exercise of looking inside your own brain for things that are making you be irrational, for things, mental malware, like in a computer, that are taking your processing and mangling it and making it do really stupid, destructive things. And this is basically what I put myself through for years and years, looking inside my head and saying, why do I believe that? I mean, yeah, I'm really certain that it's true, but why am I certain that it's true? I mean, lots of other people say it, but that isn't really good enough. And learning how to go through the process, the uncomfortable, unpleasant process of looking in your brain, it's really like looking at your operating system. And belief in government is an obvious example. Why do I think that group has the right to take my money by force? Well, people said so, but there's got to be a better reason than that. And if you take the position of an outside observer and watch your brain's reaction to new ideas, there is the rational, reasonable, evidence-based reaction to a scientific theory or something. And then there's a weird programmed and emotional reaction that is not rational, has nothing to do with reality. And the type of reaction people have is a dead giveaway whether there's something jammed into their brain that is intentionally messing with their perceptions. And so my talk is basically about how you look into your brain to find them and get rid of them, so that you're actually perceiving reality as it is, or as close as you can possibly get, and then processing the evidence and the data in a rational way.
How are you doing this self-evaluation? I mean, are you saying in your presentation you're giving, or as you talk to people, through your videos and whatnot, are you suggesting massive reality checks where you're looking at something huge like the global financial system, and how your perception on that is completely, look at it, break it apart, or because that's huge, right? And most people aren't going to want to challenge that giant chunk of reality, or do you start them at a smaller level? Look at the reality of the city cop, or city law enforcement, or county law enforcement, or the governance in their immediate life. I mean, where do you start with this malware?
Well, this particular talk isn't even so much about all of the specific conspiracies and bad ideas and stuff going on out there, even though there's lots and lots and lots of that, and I talk about that in other places, but about how do we check our own brains to see if they're processing it right. Like if somebody comes along and says, you've always been trading with that little green pieces of paper with these weird symbols on it that you never actually looked at, and when you do look at them, they seem sort of creepy and cult-like. But yeah, that's what we trade with, just because that's what we trade with. And if you say, what if we traded with somebody else? As one little example of, okay, you pause everything and you watch your brain and see how your brain responds to a question like that. If it responds by saying, no, this is just how things are, then something's horribly wrong, because that's not rational. And that's not your operating system doing what it was designed to do, which is process evidence and come out with a rational conclusion. That's something that's messed up inside your head that's making it process things wrong. So it's actually more of a look at the way your brain works to find out, are you processing things through a rational system, or are there mental viruses in there that really are mangling your perception and your ability to process reality? Because when people fix that, then they're perfectly capable of going out in the world and learning all the details and all the information about all these different issues. But until their brains work right and they have full control over them, they just can't even begin to address most of those issues because their programming doesn't let them.
Right, and it's it's what we talk about all the time, and I call it something else. I call it waking up. But I mean, you're talking about the same thing. You need to change the way you view events that are being presented to you. Not that are necessarily reality. These are the way they're being presented to you. Fascinating stuff, guys. Mark, Passio, Larken Rose. On the backside, these guys, we got them for the next hour. The topic I want to talk about is on post-collapse scenario, new forms of governance. It's something that Storm Cloud's Gathering, Aaron Hawken and I have been talking about a little bit, and I want to pick your guys' brains on that. So it's going to be interesting in the next hour, guys. Hang tight. We'll be back. This is our long break. We'll be back in about 10 minutes. See you soon. All right, guys. Welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Charlie McGrath on this 10th day of April, Wednesday, joined by Mark Passio and Larken Rose. Great first hour. basically, we talked a little bit about what you guys are going to be presenting at the Free Your Mind Conference 2. Is it 2, right? Yeah, Free Your Mind Conference 2. That web. Sorry, guys, I just had a prompt in my ear here. freeyourmindconference.com is the website. And, at the end of that hour, I said when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about forms of governance, right? It's been I've been on with Aaron Hawken lately, or a couple times lately, where we've had this round table, and it's every thought process you can think of. We've had anarchists there, we've had statists there, we've had folks that believe in the old constitutional United States. We've had folks that believe that there is, the moral relativists. And it's always an interesting conversation until it gets into a fight, which unfortunately sometimes it does. But I kind of wanted to twofold question. And Mark, I'm going to start with you since we had Larken speak for that last segment. First of all, how do you see us as a society? Let's just speak in the United States, progressing. I mean, we talked a little bit about how government is a form of a cult, where you have to have a very strong belief system to give them the power that they pretend that they have over you. And while this is going on, we're desensitized nonstop to fill in the blank. We're desensitized to enslaving our neighbors. We're desensitized to killing people around the planet. How much longer can our society progress the way it is going before we have a major awakening, either by methods like Larken likes to use or that you like to use, or by the reality when everything comes falling apart, your reality is going to be shaken and is going to be forced to change, because obviously if your life falls apart, the world falls apart, that is going to change your reality. I guess my question there is, how far are we going to see humanity decline before we have this mass awakening? The question for both of you in the rest of the hour is, what would you, if you had your way and your wishes for governance of humanity, or the kind of government we had, and it doesn't really have to even do government, monetary system. How would we treat one another? What would be how would we get along as individuals, or what would we use as a governance? Mark, let me pass that to you first. I know it's a big, broad, long question,
sure.
But yeah, how much longer can humanity survive on the path we're on? There's a short
answer. I think humanity is choosing the way of maximum suffering. Yeah. According to what I can see and perceive that's taking place all around me. We don't want the easy way out. We want the hard way that involves the most pain, it would seem. I think it's a poor choice, but I think that's what humanity is currently choosing for itself. Why they're choosing that for themselves comes down to a deep, inherent lack of self-love. And people are ultimately self-loathing. They have been convinced that they are not worth more than what they really are worth inherently. Human beings have infinite value. There's no number or price tag that could be placed on a human being, because they're each individual aspects of creation with unique forms of a unique form of consciousness in and of themselves, and all of us carry a spark of the divine within us. So you can't place a number on that as far as value goes. But unfortunately, human beings have been conditioned to think that we are worth so much less than that we don't have infinite worth. And our value system is based in this illusory concept called money, that is just a control system to limit people's access to energy and resources that they need to survive. That's all money ever has been and ever will be. It's a control system. But what we're doing is we're clinging on to this dark worldview. We're clinging on to these illusory systems, which basically are tantamount to religions. They are religions, authority, money, etc. Okay, the whole control system. It's a religion. It's a cult, and we don't want to admit that we were so duped and that we were so wrong because it's a death process. Truth is a subtractive process. It's getting rid of things that we were once attached to and holding on to and actually identified with. See, people are so identified with these lies, with these deceptions, with these illusions, that their identity is completely wrapped up in them. And to give them away, to stop believing in them, is a death process. It's actually, they see it as they're dying if they let go of these things. So people want to resist death more than anything else because they want their own survival. Self-preservation is very much held in a very high place in people's minds, and we don't want to die. So because our identities are wrapped up in these belief systems, we're clinging on to them with unbelievable stubbornness. And since these things are in direct contradiction to the laws of nature, and nature's pushing forward with its will to make us evolve, we are going to see a really, really destructive climax if things continue on the path that we're on. And it's going to be suffering the likes of which I don't think humanity has ever witnessed yet on this planet. It's going to be beyond what people are even envisioning that it is. And that's a very dark outlook. I realize that. But I want to try to be honest with people about what I see coming. The only way I think that we could avert that is if we develop the courage to be able to admit that we were wrong about so many things and then give up those belief systems, completely abandon them, walk away from them because we recognize these are not serving who we are, and most of all, they're not serving the direction that we say we want to go, which is to evolve and to be more free and to be more prosperous. There's no way you can do that and hold on to those beliefs. Again, I give the analogy, it's like saying, I want to dry the clothes that I just washed, but I'm just going to keep pouring more water on them. But I magically want them to get dry. Well, the two things are incompatible. They're antithetical to each other. They're diametrically opposed. You can't do one and have the other outcome manifest. You have to give up the belief system if you want to see the manifestation of what you say you want manifest in reality. Without giving up that belief system, that manifestation is impossible.
I agree with you, but do you see, I mean, what is the time frame? I mean, do you see, looking at your study about history or the occult and the New Age movement and how the government is becoming occult and this progression of, the degradation of morality, is it something that has happened throughout time and history where we reach a point of just depravity and then we get a moral compass for a bit and then we go back to a more peaceful, loving way for a spell until corruption takes us to a place of evil once again? Yes. I mean, is it a wave?
It does work in cycles like that. And the reason is because we never get down to the fundamental axioms, the underlying causal factors that lay in our belief systems, and really learn the quintessential truth. And that truth is, again, going back to the axiom of rights, we still have not developed fully the collective mass consciousness of humanity. And what I mean by that is the aggregate of individuated consciousnesses, okay? So in each individual's mind, and that builds up in an aggregate effect. When you put all people's perceptions together and what they hold in their mind together, it is going to form kind of like a large mass consciousness that is going to actually direct the entire evolutionary course of the species on this planet. And the reason that we're heading in a dark direction is because at an individual level, more people still have not come to a deep understanding of the knowledge of what right is and what wrong is. In order to do that, in order to get us to that point, we have to get down to philosophy and understand what a right is by understanding what rights are not. We need to look at it from the negative point of view. What actions cause harm and therefore are wrongs? Well, those things are not rights. Everything that is not a wrong, we reserve as a right. And I can get into that a little bit, after the break if you'd like.
You bet. Let's do that. We'll be back with our panel here in just a minute. Hang tight. Guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Charlie McGrath, Larken Rose, and Mark Passio continuing the conversation as we did during the break. And listening to both of you guys, it's very interesting to me because you guys are both doing a great job, I believe, in trying to shake people out of a false reality and give them the tools to see the truth and to see where we're at. And my question, of course, is where we're going and how we will handle that journey. But Mark, you give an answer that is very macro. It seems very macro in nature. It's a very in-depth overview. And Larken, I think your answers are more micro. And I think both of you guys serve an excellent purpose to your prospective people listening to you, your prospective crowd that would listen and agree with you, because they're both two very powerful ways to try to influence somebody, either through a macro perspective or a micro perspective. And for the remainder of the program, because in the last half hour, I really want to get both of you guys' notion of what would be a better, kinder world post-collapse scenario. But in order to do that, Larken, I'm going to turn it over to you now with the same question that I asked Mark earlier, which is the trajectory we are on. How much longer can we stay on this, and where does it? How does this end? Does it end with a renaissance, or does it end with a new neo-feudal system?
To me, it ends with humanity. The only question is how much stupid destruction we're going to do in the meantime. And at the moment, it looks like the answer to that is pretty darn much. I think there's bad news and good news. The bad news is I don't think people can be forced into thinking. I mean, if you look at human history for thousands of years, they're slaughtering each other, they're enslaving each other. Literally, most people would rather die than reconsider the belief system they were indoctrinated into, as demonstrated by almost every war that ever happens. The people charging off to the front lines to kill somebody they know nothing about because somebody they've never met told them to. And that, as a testament to the strength in authoritarian indoctrination, just demonstrates that you can't actually make people think about this. And to me, one of the most depressing proofs of that is during World War II in Nazi Germany, the main opposition to the Nazis were the communists. Like that was the answer. Oh, well, we don't want that guy in charge violently dominating everybody. We want some other guy with a slightly different flavor of collectivist authoritarian. If you can't think rationally under Nazi Germany, then you cannot be forced to think rationally. So that's the bad news. You can't be forced to be rational. However, the good news is lots and lots and lots of people are, for whatever reason, choosing to be rational. And they're choosing to reconsider their belief systems and what they were indoctrinated into in just huge numbers. And just in the past few years, I've seen a huge increase. It's late, and I can't remember the mathematical term for the line that keeps going up faster and faster. Come on. Well, my brain doesn't work.
The hockey stick? What?
No, it's embarrassing. It's too late.
Huge
the
consequence.
Line keeps going up. Self-accelerating, I'll say that. That's close enough.
Parabolic?
Parabolic. Wait, is that even... who cares? Anyway, You know what I mean.
I do.
Where it's
exponential growth.
Exponential. Yay, exponential.
Yay. I told you Larken is a micro. Exponential yay. That's what I understand.
Exponential yay. Yeah. So this is wildly spreading, and the thing is, I think there's totally going to be a big nasty collapse right in front of us, but the beauty is even a small group of people who decides to be rational will do just fine. If there are 100 people, even a dozen maybe, in the middle of nowhere, in the woods or in a house, in a town, whatever, and they all say, I've figured out that I own myself and you own yourself, and maybe we should figure out how to live through the next 10 years. People are actually pretty darn good at that once they give up the who's in charge mentality. And you see this in a bunch of, apocalyptic movies of, oh my gosh, there's zombies everywhere, there's some giant explosion and everything's going to mayhem. Who's in charge? As long as that is people's question, they're just doomed. They're just going to be stupid, violent animals attacking each other. until people say, I'm in charge of me and you're in charge of you. And I'm pretty sure that we're both rational and nice enough that that doesn't require either of us to kill the other one. In which case, we can figure out lots of ways to cooperate and organize and feed ourselves and make sure we have shelter and stuff like that. And eventually make sure we have cell phones and automobiles. And just the mentality of self-ownership can deal with almost anything, almost any situation. And you can actually sort of see that coming out in when there's an emergency situation, when there's a flood or an earthquake or something, and people figure out, well, I better just be in charge. I'm not waiting around for authority to show up. Suddenly people show that, yeah, if they know that they're in charge, they can be pretty darn rational and moral.
Right.
Just when they think they're somebody else's slave, that they act like complete imbeciles.
I agree with that. When you have to take responsibility for your own self, your own loved one, your own family, then your perspective certainly, by necessity, has to make a change. Larken Rose, Mark Passio. Hang tight, guys. We'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Charlie McGrath, Mark Passio, Larken Rose. Larken, please finish up on your point you were cut off with, and then I'm going to kick the question to Mark following that about what kind of system of governance do we need, if we need any at all. Larken, finish up. The question was, where does humanity go on its current path, and how long does it take to get to that destination?
Well, for the time it'll take for the whole world to wake up, it's going to be a long time after probably several more wars and depressions and various other catastrophes. But already the awakening has begun, and there's already a whole lot of people who are already awake. Now, it's sort of inconvenient to be in a world where you understand you own yourself and 7 billion other people don't get that yet because they tend to have wars and want to rob you and subjugate you. But there are thousands and thousands of people now figuring this out, and they'll do just fine. And I think the kind of governance we need is I govern me and you govern you, and that's all. Because the moment people say, well, we need something outside of ourselves that's controlling us, they're just doomed, because there isn't anything outside of you with the right to rule you. Right. When they think in terms of organization and cooperation of equal sovereign beings, for lack of a better term, then they do just fine. You can do all sorts of organizations and arrangements, but the moment they want to defer their responsibility to somebody else and call them authority, they're just doomed. They're headed down the same road that brought us here and brought us to... And
that's happened time and time again.
Yeah,
right,
I do think the cycle thing is about to end forever. And I mean about to, it may be years. But the cycle of giant superpower falls over by revolution, economic collapse, whatever, that's about to end, because I think it will be actually the relatively near future where enough of the people understand that authority is a complete lie so that government cannot take hold anymore. And then we'll have to just kind of get used to being rational human beings instead of slaves of a mythical deity.
And I got a question coming in. Gary, I saw your question. Mark, I want to get your... Well, here's the thing. I've been involved in this discussion too. What do you do post-apocalyptic scenario? And when I say apocalyptic, I don't necessarily mean, where we're all singed and there's nothing left and we're all just waiting around to die. But in a world of a mass awakening and people basically opting out of the lies, the discussion tends to always go to where Larken kind of took it, which is, I'm going to do what I'm going to do as long as it doesn't hurt you. That's fine with me, and whatever you do, as long as it doesn't hurt me, that's fine with you, and we'll just get along. Mark, do you see that as possible? Do you see in the future, in a perfect world, as perfect as we could get to as humans, something evolving into some kind of governance where it is self-governance, and we don't have any kind of structure that we see now or have in the past?
I think either that's going to happen or humanity is going to go away. That's the choice. Creation is giving us the choice to evolve or go extinct. And either we evolve to that level of consciousness where we understand that we are all sovereign, or humanity is going to meet its end at some point. And, you know, I want to take this into the realm of just looking at some words for a moment, because it's so powerful when you really understand specific words that we're speaking, you know, how much meaning can come out of that. Like the word sovereign, there's this, big movement of police training to deal with sovereign citizens. They don't even know what the word they're saying means. Like people don't know what the word government means. A lot of people don't know what the word anarchy really means. The word sovereign, we're all sovereign beings, okay? You ask anybody, are you a sovereign being? Are you sovereign? And some people look at you like you have a second head growing out of your neck because they don't even understand the meaning of the word.
Or they believe the stigma, you know,
the stigma,
they subscribe
the
to the
connotation
stigma
that they've heard.
Yeah.
Right. So the actual word comes from Latin, okay? It comes from a Latin adverb, super, S-U-P-E-R, and super in Latin means above or beyond. And the second part of the word, reign, okay, comes from the Latin noun regnum. Regnum means rulership or control by someone else. In other words, a state of rulership over someone else, okay? So a sovereign means literally above rulership, above being controlled from outside of oneself, above externally imposed control. It means one who is above the rulership or control of another, or in other words, someone who is not a subject or a slave to someone else. So when we say the word sovereign, all that word translates to in English from its original etymological roots is not a slave. So then if you ask somebody, are you a slave? 100% of people are going to say, no, I'm no one's slave. Okay.
Right.
Yet you ask them if they're a sovereign and they look at you like you're speaking a different language, because this is what they've been robbed of. The basic understanding of the words that they speak, and words have been obfuscated, and we've been given connotations in place of definitions. This is the power of words and understanding their true meaning. That's all sovereign means, not a slave. So when you ask me what kind of governance I'd like to see internal self-governance. And what I call that is a monarchy. It's an internal monarchy. People would say, oh, you're advocating monarchy. Yes, I'm advocating internal monarchy. I think we need 7 billion monarchies on this planet where each person is the ruler of themselves and only themselves, and they don't step on the rights and freedoms of anyone else. That's what we need. But until we get to a higher level of consciousness, no one can even comprehend that that condition is possible. So it is possible. Are we going to willfully choose it by giving up our irrational belief systems? More likely than not, probably not. We're on the path of seemingly not choosing that and just spitting in the face of that opportunity that's being presented to us by creation. You know, we just want to slap that gift right out of the hand of the force that is trying to bring that level of consciousness onto us as a species. So you look at the term anarchy. You know, I say we need 7 billion internal monarchies where somebody is the ruler of the self and nothing else. They have the right to rule their own thoughts, their own emotions, and their own actions, and that's it, and don't transgress against the rights of other people by coercing their free will and committing violence against them. So we need one collective state of anarchy in the world, and anarchy comes from Greek roots. The Greek prefix an, A-N, means without or the absence of a thing. Okay? And the Greek noun archon means master or ruler, as in the master of a slave, or one who is the ruler of subjects that must obey him. So the term archon means a slave owner. Okay? So when you put it together with an, meaning without or the absence of, it means without rulers, without masters. It does not mean without rules. The word anarchy does not mean without rules. There's always going to be rules because natural law is always in effect, and it's always bringing us the consequences of the behaviors that we choose as a result of our free will. Anarchy literally means no rulers, no masters. Now, if you say the term no rulers, no masters to someone, they're going to associate that with freedom. But
Yeah.
if you say anarchy to people, they've been mind controlled into believing that that word means something that it absolutely does not mean, and they've associated through repetition that word with chaos. And so they're getting people to believe that that means chaos, and you don't want that. That's the thing to be feared above all else. When in fact, we're already in the state of chaos by being ruled and kept as slaves by people who believe that they have the right to rule over us. And all anarchy does mean now, and always ever has meant, is the absence of a master and slave relationship. And that's the state I'd really like to see humanity choose.
Well, yeah, well, great timing, by the way. The music, it just started. And it's another example of, the term sovereign citizen or sovereign movement. There's debate in the chat room about the citizen being on the end of it. Debate or the term sovereign itself as the term anarchist or anarchy is turned into something that is to be denigrated and to be looked down upon, and that is by design, of course. We're going to be back with Mark Passio, Larken Rose, final segment. Hang tight. We'll be right back. Guys, welcome back to final segment. And first of all, before we get going, Larken Rose, Mark Passio, guys, thanks so much for giving us 2 hours of your night tonight. It's a big commitment, and I appreciate you guys hanging out with me for this much time. And make sure, if I forget and Gary doesn't remind me, make sure we give out information on the Free Your Mind 2 conference and your guys' website before we close out as well. A question came in to the chat, which was directed to Mark, but I'd like to get Larken. I'd like to get you in on this too. The definition of natural law. And Mark, you gave us a long, short answer during the break, and I'd like you to repeat that, please. Give us your definition of natural law, and Larken, feel free to share yours with us too.
Okay, what I give as a working definition of natural law, and again, the term natural is so co-opted and obfuscated in our society because people completely erroneously associate it with the concept of what they perceive as the quote-unquote natural order, which this has zero to do with. That's based on Darwinian theory, and that is nothing whatsoever about what I'm talking about when I use the phrase natural law. When I use the phrase natural law, I'm giving a working definition here. It is the universal, non-man-made, binding, and immutable conditions that govern the consequences of behavior. So let me just break that down real quick. The universal, that means it works at all times, at all places, everywhere in the universe. There is nowhere you can go in the three-dimensional space-time continuum that we call our universe to escape from natural law. It exists at all times and all places. Non-man-made. Man did not put these laws into effect. It's like gravity or electromagnetism. We are not responsible for the manifestation of these laws. They exist in nature. They are inherent to creation. They are binding, meaning they have an effect no matter where you go. You are bound by them. It doesn't matter if you believe in them. It doesn't matter if you understand them. It doesn't matter if you want to understand them. It doesn't matter if you scoff at them. It doesn't matter if you believe they don't exist. They are always there, just like gravity. Okay, this is a physical law, but it governs the consequences of behavior. And they're immutable. That means we're not in a position to change them. They cannot be changed by anything we do. It doesn't make a difference if you don't believe that it's the case. It is the case. What I'm saying is it's not the case because I say it's the case. It's just like gravity. I could state that gravity is in effect. I could tell you how it operates. We could do calculations to calculate the gravitational attraction between objects depending on their size, mass, and space, the space between them, etc. But it wouldn't be true because I showed you all of that. It would still be true whether I understood it or not. So it has. People will say, "Oh, you're trying to say this is the way that it is because you say it's that way." No, right. This isn't my belief system whatsoever. I have no belief systems. This isn't a religion. This is a discovery that is based in science. I don't know what else I can say other than it is an observable effect that exists in nature if you have a worldview that is open to the understanding of it. And that's what occultism basically really is. True positive occultism, not dark occultism, which seeks to hide this truth from people. Okay, I look at myself as a de-occultist. I'm trying to unhide these truths that have been so hidden, and it's the result of their being hidden is generated so much suffering because humanity doesn't understand how natural law works. I'm de-occulting occulted information. I consider myself a de-occultist now, okay? Because all occult means is hidden. That's what people have to understand. And occultism, the real occultism, is the study of the hidden laws of nature that don't operate in the realm of the seen. They operate largely in the realm of the unseen. So you have to incorporate a larger worldview of how the universe is actually bringing our experiences to us through our free will decisions and our behaviors. And that is what natural law is: the universal, non-man-made, binding and immutable conditions that ultimately governs the consequences of the behaviors we choose. These are universal governing dynamics that exist in nature.
Larken? Larken? Micro.
Ditto.
Ditto. I knew that was coming. That's a great Go ahead.
Yeah, I really like his answer, and I'm going to add my own cop-out to it, which is just as with the other issue, I like to, like we were talking about with moral relativity, I basically tell people, you already know what's right and wrong. If you saw somebody running around randomly killing people with a machete, you'd know it was wrong. You'd hope it would stop. You might not dare to stop it. But this is not, when it comes down to just the basics of how you should be a good human being, the vast majority of people get it. They get that it's not okay to attack people and rob people, except in the context where they've been trained to think that there are exemptions, and which is what authority is all about. Now, it used to be religion mostly, and now it's usually called government. But in their day-to-day lives, on a practical level, you put 2 people in a room or you put 10 people in a room, and each of them gets, even if I'm greedy and I wish I had what that guy had,
right?
Just on a practical level, if I try to take it, somebody's going to smack me. And hopefully on the level up from that is it's actually wrong for me to do that, so I'm not going to do that. But like when you get in discussions of people saying, well, how will this work and how will that work without government? They don't understand what anarchy, quote unquote, takes out of the equation. It takes out a very small thing. And the concept of natural law is just right and wrong minus the exemption for the rulers. There's no exemption for the rulers. So when people ask me things like, well, under your system, which everybody says, and I have to say it's not a system, it's a lack of a system. It's
right.
Each person being free. But under your system, how would this work without government? And I say, I want to just reword the question to make it more precise and specific. And after I reword it, I won't even need to answer it because it's so obvious. When somebody asks, how do we do this without government? Literally what that means is, how would we do this without giving anyone an exemption from the rules of morality? It's like there are 10 people in a room and you say, well, let's see, how are we going to go get food without giving Bob the right to beat the living daylights out of all of us? Why does anybody think giving Bob the right to beat the daylights out of the rest of us is going to help matters? It doesn't add any skill. It doesn't add any knowledge. It adds violence, and that's kind of bad. And if you're trying to get food for 10 people, one guy beating up the other guys isn't really the best way to start. But literally, when people say, well, how do you do this without government? It's because they're so stuck inside the mindset of looking to a mythical authority to make a plan and force it on everybody that they don't get that what they're actually saying is, how would we do this if we don't have a gang of people that's exempt from morality? We don't have a gang that's allowed to rob us and violently control us. And on a smaller scale, nobody thinks in those terms. If there's 10, 20 people on a desert island, they're trying to figure out how to make huts. Nobody says, well, golly, I don't think we could do this unless we let Bob violently dominate the rest of us. Nobody thinks that way. It's utterly insane. They have to be taught to think that way on a larger scale. And then they're taught, well, this scale is so big that you can't even imagine it. So, yeah, we have to have rulers taking our money and bossing us around because, gosh, the world is so big and complicated. We can't handle it as just human beings. There has to be a gang with the right to stomp on us. So basically, to me, natural law is what people already understand inside their own heads. minus that stupid exception that they're taught to believe in that says those people over there, well, they can do whatever they want.
They can
not
step
humans.
outside.
Yeah, their authority, they can bludgeon us and do whatever they feel like. Natural law is what almost everybody already understands the basics of. They've just been taught to believe there's an exception. And all I try to do is say there isn't an exception. If you don't have the right to do it without a badge, you don't have a right to do it with a badge. It's not that complicated. And if you're going to look at the world and figure out how to do things, step one is don't imagine that anybody has the right to beat the tar out of you. And if you get the first step right, people are pretty good at figuring out the rest. Unfortunately, 7 billion people get the first step wrong. And they say, well, who do we appoint to beat the tar out of the rest of us? And
that's right. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say yes, and it's always done under the system globally. I mean, not just here but around the world. Government in general is always presented as a savior to the people or a protector, but in reality, it's 180 degrees opposite.
Yeah, it's a parasite. And the things we're taught about, it represents us while it's clobbering us over the head and stealing our money, and we're really it. We are the government, even though they're over there, we're over here, and we pay the money or they put us in a cage. I don't quite know how we are them. It's pretty darn obvious that there's a master and a slave.
Yeah.
But we're taught this bizarre just dogma that doesn't make any sense. And if people just let go of that and come to the disturbing realization, hey, we're all just people. We're all at the top level. There's nobody beneath us. Like Mark was saying, sovereign. Nobody's my master and nobody's your master. Now, how can we be human beings? And that programmed in tendency to say, well, somebody has to be in charge, it really is the downfall of mankind. You're in charge of you and I'm in charge of me. And if we just grasp that, people do pretty darn well at getting along. Unfortunately, 7 billion people don't grasp that yet.
And that's largely based on people's poisoned worldview that humanity's nature is fundamentally bad. And that we're not actually just in a condition. We have been worked into a condition. People mistake the human condition that is a result of conditioning for their nature. And that worldview is what the controllers of this world want to propagate. Because as long as people's worldview is people are bad, what you're really saying is I'm not worth more than this.
Right.
That this is all I'm eternally ever worth. That's what that whole negative, completely poisoned worldview of the horrible state of human nature, that this is just how it eternally is, how we eternally are. We are this thing. We can't move past being this thing. That's wrong. This is just a condition. We can move past it if we apply our will to change our mind.
And if somebody thinks for 1 second that natural law isn't in effect, again, regardless if you believe it or not, and there isn't consequences to us giving this authority that we can't give to people who want to use it against us. All you need to do is look at if you look at natural law and look at the consequences of humanity, where we're at, it's pretty much self-evident that we have stepped far from natural law and these binding tenets of natural law. Mark Passio, Larken Rose, guys, thank you very much. Quick website here. We got freeyourmindconference.com. Guys, Larken, you want to give one out?
LarkenRose.com.
Mark?
WhatOnEarthIsHappening.com.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. I appreciate your 2 hours tonight. And we'll and if we don't talk to you before the conference, good luck and do your best at waking as many people up as you can. I know you will. Guys, stay tuned for Jeff Rentz. I will be Jeff's guest for the first hour. You can hang out here in the chat. I'll be staying here in chat for that broadcast as well. All right, guys, we'll see you tomorrow night. Have a good night. Peace.